But as the Tories face the unwelcome prospect of a by-election which could see a safe seat handed to the Liberal Democrats, many MPs are now asking how long can Mr Major last?
John Major must be wondering when it's all going to end, his government rocked by a series of scandals.
I get the feeling at times that this government is beginning to go into free fall.
As the shockwaves of Mr Milligan's death continue to reverberate around Westminster and beyond, Mr Milligan's death appears to confirm that truth is often stranger than fiction about the Palace of Westminster. Without giving away the plot, it would seem the next chapter in the story will be a swing away from the Conservatives of more than 12% in Eastleigh and the government's Commons majority reduced to just 15.
He was found at his West London home wearing stockings and suspenders and allegedly tied up with flex. But according to psychiatrists, people who cross-dress aren't that unusual.
Research suggests as many as 1 in 10 men are fascinated at the thought of dressing up in women's clothes, but many haven't got the nerve to try it. Medical opinion is divided about why many men get hooked on fetishes. For some, it's underwear or the feel of certain fabrics. For others, it's pain or even more dangerous games. Quite often, it's men from harsh upper-class backgrounds with little love and attention during childhood who have more bizarre sexual leanings. For those who take it more seriously, it can have extremely dangerous results. Eve Richings, Sky News.
And in fact, Vicky Lee joins us now as Vicky, along with Dr. Raj Persod, a clinical psychiatrist. Good evening to you both. Thank you for coming in. Excuse me, Vicky, first of all, why do you feel this compulsion to dress as a woman?
It's a proven fact that guys have got a cross-dressing kind of link inside them, and it is going to be in their life all the way through their life. They will suppress it. It might come out and turn them towards alcohol or brutality. They might try and hide it by being very macho, but it will always be inside them.
But are you saying that you can express a feminine side of your nature in some way through dressing as a woman that you couldn't express in any other way?
Yes, I think men are socialised to perform in a stereotype male way, and for those who can't express themselves any other way, then it is through the clothes. So I openly admit that I use the clothes to help me and take that off that layer of suppression.
You've actually written a transvestite's guide to London.
Yes.
How tolerant is society of people like you?
Surprisingly, shops and places that people can go to are very tolerant, especially in the major cities. And people in shops are very helpful and very understanding.
Is the kind of thing that you do linked in any way to the sort of bizarre sexual practices we are led to believe that Mr. Milligan may have been involved with?
No, I don't see that cross-dressing is the same thing as a fetish. I would assume that if indeed he was in a situation where he put those clothes on himself, then that was from a fetishistic way of getting satisfaction.
Dr. Persod, if I could bring you in here, what does the situation in which Mr. Milligan was found suggest to you? He had a bag over his head, a flex around his neck, he was apparently wearing stockings and suspenders.
Well, we don't know enough details yet of the actual particular case to say quite firmly what was going on, but one can speculate that he probably was involved in the syndrome known to psychiatrists as autoerotic asphyxia. And that's a situation where people derive a sexual kick, get sexually aroused from depriving oxygen from going to their brain. And they may do that in all sorts of ways. They may have a cord around their neck, they may have a plastic bag over their head, or they may have a very restricting mask. In fact, this is not as uncommon as a lot of people may have at first suspected. Between 100 to 200 cases are actually found dead each year in Britain, having killed themselves playing this rather dangerous game.
Is this a game that's played alone?
No, it very rarely is played with another person, and that may be one of the things the police are trying to investigate right now, but usually it's a solitary game.
And what sort of people tend to become involved in this?
It's very difficult to answer that question because there are not enough cases to do proper research, but the few studies that have been done suggest these tend to be middle-class white men. Less than 10% are gay, so most are heterosexual.
Do you find that there is a similar sort of social background to the kind of people, Vicky, who dress as women?
Yeah, there seems to be a pattern of people from sort of late 20s through to 40s, from professional backgrounds. I put that down to stresses in their lives at that point, where they're finding extra pressure from bringing up families, their work, and they feel that they can live through this persona for a few hours or for a weekend or a night out with less pressure on them.
Would you prefer to live in a society where you didn't have to dress as a woman to express your personality?
Yes, I would like everybody to merge towards an in-betweeny state where men can express themselves, involve themselves, as women now can work in much more macho fields. I want to see men move into more feminine fields and the crossover to merge.
And Dr. Persaud, just because Mr. Milligan was found wearing stockings and so on doesn't necessarily imply that he was a transvestite. It was just a means of arousing himself.
Yes, I agree with Vicky.
Yes,
I think
it's
almost certainly a case of fetishism rather than cross-dressing. And usually these people who are found, unfortunately, dead, having taking part in autoerotic asphyxiation, have all sorts of materials around them, usually to do with sadism, masochism, all sorts of paraphernalia of perverse sexual practices.
I mean, what would your advice be to people who feel they want to indulge in this kind of thing?
Well, it's really too dangerous. The trouble is, there's a very fine line between depriving oxygen to the brain and the sexual kick you get from that and going too far, falling unconscious and therefore doing yourself some serious damage.
And does it cause brain damage?
The theory is that this is an act that's often repeated. People repeatedly indulge in autoerotic asphyxiation, and although they may not deprive themselves of enough oxygen to cause apparent damage, they probably are damaging their brain in a very subtle way. And after that repeated damage, they may get to the stage where they're not able to form the judgment of when to stop doing this.
Dr. Raj Persaud and Vicky Lee, thank you both very much indeed for talking to us. Well, as another scandal hits the Conservative Party, we ask, is this the end for John Major and his government?